You know, these tribes, the sons of Jacob, are actually much different than any of the other sons that are in our lineage. They're different because they actually became tribes, and each one of these tribes was given their own distinct name, and that with that name is tied a destiny, just like the name that you've been given by Jesus Christ is tied to your destiny and unfolds your destiny. They were given a distinct banner that they would raise up and look to, and on that banner was prophetic things that they were to believe God for and live under and abide under and camp under. You know, whatever you camp under, that's what you will become. If you camp under negativity, that's what you will become. If you camp under the Word, you camp under the visions of God, then that's what you will see happen in your own life. They had their own stone that was specifically assigned to them. Each one of the 12 tribes had their own stone. And they had their own blessing. Each one had a double blessing. They had a blessing from their father, which you and I have, and they also have a blessing from their deliverer, Moses, which you and I also have. Our deliverer, Jesus, is interceding for us right now at the right hand of the Father. He is speaking blessing over your life right now. He is prophesying over you and calling forth everything that He has determined since before the foundation of the world for you and for me. Now, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, as we looked at these tribes, let's just remember that Levi was the tribe. His stone was the amber stone. Remember, when you rub on the amber stone, something happens. It releases the potential energy that's in it, the static electricity, and that's what happens with the Word. We've already heard today about lifting up the Word because Levi, the message of Levi is we must exalt the Word of God in our lives. We must lift it up. It will not exalt itself. The Word will never have the proper place in your life that it ought to have unless you put it there. I have to put it there. Then was the tribe of Naphtali. Naphtali was the prevailing wrestler. Naphtali says, listen, there's a struggle, but you're going to win. There's a struggle, and the struggle is not going to keep you from winning. The struggle is going to make you win. It's going to cause you to win. And the stone of Naphtali was ivory. Ivory is flame resistant, it's heat resistant, it's water resistant, it's damage resistant, shock resistant. It has a lot of resistance, and you and I in the Spirit have that same kind of resistance. We can pass through things, get over things, get around things, get through things, because ultimately we have already been given a victory. So I'm not afraid of the struggle, because it is the struggle that is causing me to get my win. Right? And then there was that Issachar. Issachar was the tribe of understanding. They took the high understanding of God and applied it to their lower daily life on earth. And it is absolutely key that I do not lean on my own understanding, but in all my ways that I acknowledge Him and I acknowledge what God says. As we were up here just being ministered to by the Lord, you were hearing these themes coming out. I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to give credit to things that don't deserve the credit. I'm going to take on an understanding that's higher, a knowledge that's higher. That was the tribe of Issachar. Today is the next one, and I want to read to you today what his mother said about him. This is the fourth one we're doing, but it's not the fourth son of Jacob, but it is the fourth one we're doing. Here is what his mother had to say about him. Leah conceived again, and she bore a sixth son to Jacob. This was her sixth son. It was actually Jacob's 10th son, but it was her sixth one. Then Leah said, God has endowed me with a good gift. In other words, Leah looks at this baby and goes, wow, there's something special here. You know, this is what happened to Moses' mother. She looked at him and goes, wow, there's something going on here. God's doing something here. This is something special. I don't want to miss this. This is a little bit different. I've had 5 other sons, but wow, this one has got a little glow to it. This one's got something on it that the others don't have. And God began to highlight for her. And so as she looked at this son, she goes, you know what? God has endowed me with a good gift. What I've got here is something really good. In fact, some translations say priceless, some say precious, some say beautiful, some say wonderful. I have a wonderful gift here. Now, here's what she says. She says, God has endowed, or God has given, and she uses the word zabad, Z-A-B-A-D. God has given me, zabad, a good gift, zebed. Zabad, zebed. Now you say, Pastor Buddy, what difference does that make? Well, one of the differences it makes is this. That's the only time in the entire Old Testament you will ever find those two words. God reaches out and insert some words into the Bible that are never used again throughout the entire Bible. Oh yeah, we'll find gifts other places in the Old Testament. You will find people giving things in the Old Testament, but you will not find the word Zabad or the word Zebed anywhere else in the Bible. So we know something very, very special is going on here. Here's another thing that she says about this son. Then Leah said, God has endowed me with a good marriage gift. That's another way to say it, a marriage gift for my husband. Now he will dwell with me because I have borne him 6 sons. And she named him Zebulun, which means dwelling. She said, I have a good gift. She really sees this as a dowry. You know what a dowry is? A dowry is something that you have that you're going to share with somebody else. It's something that's going to belong to you, and it's also going to belong to others. And what she's saying is this: hey, what God has given me is going to be better for me. It's going to make things good for me and for my husband. It's going to make things better for both of us. In other words, there's an interconnectivity here because of what's going on. And she says, and he will dwell with me. Literally, the idea behind that word is that I am opening up my tent for someone else to come in to my tent. And when she says, I have borne the 6th son, 6 in the Bible is a reference to humanity. It is a reference to things of the earth, things that are practical, personal, daily life. So whatever Leah's talking about here is something that is going to impact me on a very personal, daily life basis, something that is not so much heavenly as it is more involved humanity. And so she names him Zebulun. Zebulun means a habitation. It means open arms. It means an open life, literally. And so here along comes Zebulun. Now, Zebulun is an interesting son because there are some things about him that we are reflected by the things that his father says about him. Now, it's one thing when your mother says some things about you, because mothers do a lot of naming in the Bible. They name their kids. A lot of mothers do that. But here comes the father. Here's what the father has to say. Now, when the father speaks over Zebulun, Zebulun is in Egypt at this time, and Zebulun already has 3 sons. At this time, but as the father is prophesying over this grown son, this is what he says: Zebulun will live by the seashore. He will become a safe harbor for ships. His border will go out toward Sidon. Now, Jacob is saying a bunch of stuff about Zebulun that obviously is not true at the moment. You know, that's what prophecy is. A lot of times God's speaking things about you that you don't see yet. In fact, I would like to submit to you today that what Jacob is saying about Zebulun is the exact opposite of what Zebulun was at the moment. Because Zebulun had 3 sons. And those sons, if you look up the names of those sons, what you discover, one of them means fearful and insecure. Another one means closed off and walled. And another one means I'm staying put where I am and I'm not moving out. Now, that is the opposite of everything that Jacob has just prophesied over his son. He said, you will be this, you will do this, and you will be this. You will become a safe harbor for ships. You know, the banner of Zebulun had a ship on it in a harbor. And what is amazing about this is that Zebulun is the only tribe that had a natural harbor where ships could actually come in to the land. Some tribes had beach, tribes had shore, but only Zebulun had a natural harbor. He was designed to be able to receive ships. And when the Bible talks about ships, it is not referring to the size of the ship or the kind of the ship. It has much more to do with what the ship is carrying and what it is delivering. And so the message of the ship that is on this banner that Zebulun is to look at is basically this: you have something that I need. I have something that you need. Let's connect. You have something I don't have in my land. I have stuff that you don't have in your land. So let's come together and associate and connect and relate. That was the message that Zebulun was to see when they looked at their banner. We must relate. We must be open. We must associate. So God gave them a natural harbor. And so the banner shows a ship with a harbor. Now, depending on who you look at and read and talk to with regard to the tribes of the Old Testament, if you go home and you look up, I'm going to look up a map and I want to see where all the tribes were. One of the things you will notice is that there are no boundary lines drawn between the tribes, because nobody knows exactly where the boundaries were. If you read the instructions in Joshua, you go, huh? Starts at this tree over here and goes over to that brook over there and then by that stone over there. Well, it's impossible. Some people say that Zebulun did not have access to water. I would submit to you that that's wrong, because the prophecy says that he will live by the seashore, that he will become a safe harbor for ships, and his border will go out toward Sidon. Now, Zebulun is the only tribe who has a border with at least 4 other tribes. Zebulun was dropped into the middle of a bunch of other tribes, and the word border there has the idea of being soft-sided, of sort of being flexible and being able to fit in and sort of accommodate other things. Zebulun had a border that allowed him to connect and relate to a lot of the other tribes at one time. Now, he also had a stone. And Zebulun's stone is amazing, because Zebulun's stone, now I remember the proviso that I gave you last week, that when you read about what these stones are, you'll get a lot of different interpretation out of the Bible. But here, Zebulun's stone, I believe, was turquoise. Turquoise is an amazing stone. It is called the oldest stone in man's history, because we know that there was turquoise that was referred to at least 6,000 BC. We know that by records. You will find turquoise in the tombs of the pharaohs. Turquoise was and is an amazing stone, and it has a couple of very unique qualities to it. Even though it is number 5 on the scale of hardness from 1 to 10, which is one of the harder stones that we've mentioned so far, it has this ability to be extremely porous. It allows things into its life from the outside. It is open to receive things, and it can actually absorb things into itself. Now, granite does not do that. Ivory does not do that. But this particular stone allows things into itself from the outside. And it is also what people call a very sensitive stone. You say, Pastor Buddy, I didn't know rocks could be sensitive. Well, check this out. It is believed that turquoise can actually sense the physical condition of the person that is wearing it. That it picks up on their condition. It is impacted by their condition. For instance, if someone is wearing turquoise and they become sick and they have a long-term infirmity, turquoise is said to turn pale. It will respond to their sickness by turning pale. In fact, turquoise is so sensitive that if you rub it with an abrasive, if you rub it the wrong way, it will turn an unpleasant greenish tint. Because you see, the word in the Hebrew is the word pleasant. It's where it is translated pleasant. So when you're trying to figure out what kind of stone that is, whatever that stone is, that Hebrew word means pleasant. Now, if you're going to associate and you're going to connect and you're going to relate, shouldn't you be pleasant? It would sure help, but it becomes unpleasant if it is abrasively rubbed. Now, that same turquoise, if it is on the wearer and the wearer dies, it is said that it loses its color completely. But then, if that same turquoise is then transferred to a healthy wearer, it will little by little regain all of its color. Now, isn't that amazing? Because that's a lot like the way we are. When you get hooked onto something that's unhealthy, you start losing your color. But when you get hooked back in to something that's healthy, your color comes back. Your spirit comes back. Your passion comes back. When I get locked into things that I don't need to be locked into, and I relate and connect and associate with junk, it takes my color away in the spirit. It takes my passion, my desire. So turquoise then is the stone of relating. It's the stone of association. In fact, the color turquoise is known for open communication. If you want to have a meeting room and you want people to openly communicate, paint it turquoise. That's what they say, because it has the idea of open communication. Now, God gave Zebulun to us and to the tribes as a gift so that the tribes would be relationally healthy. Not one amen out of that. Just amazing. God gave the gift of relationship to the tribes so that the tribes would understand the vital, crucial, imperative place of relationship in life. Because relationship is key to life. Let me show you what I mean. Relationship is the way we connect with God. Do we need to go into this? We don't connect on the basis of knowledge, intellect, or thought. We connect with God on the basis of relationship. It is not me knowing about God or knowing of Him. I must know Him. And I know Him through Jesus Christ. That is the way I connect. His covenant is not a covenant of knowledge. It is a covenant of relationship. So I connect with God on the basis of relationship. If there is no relationship, there is no connection. Secondly, I connect with the body of Christ on the basis of relationship. People oftentimes think the body is members, the body's a building, the body's denominations, the body is meetings, the body is this, no, the body is relationship. When you come into Christ Jesus, guess what? You get a bucket load of relatives. That's what you get. You didn't ask for them, you got them. You get relations, you get relatives, you get relationship. Now, why does God do that? What I want you to think about this. Because my relationship with others defines my relationship with Jesus. Oh yeah, John says, how can you love God that you can't see and you don't love your brother who you do see? Now that's John. Now what did Jesus say? Jesus said, if you've done that to the least of these, guess what? You just did it to me. So my relationship with other people defines my relationship with Jesus. That's how important relationship is in the body. Third, another way, relationships are extremely important because it's the way I connect with the world. How are people ever going to know how awesome Jesus is unless we tell them, unless we show them? Somebody came up to me before church and said, well, we got this thing going on in our family, and it's a little dodgy and a little this and that and the other. And you know the end of the conversation was, hey, guess what? God has sown you and planted you into that situation so you can show the love of Jesus. Those people have no idea about the love of Jesus. That's why. Now, if I'm going to, well, those people are weird, I'm not getting around them, they drink too much beer, they do this, they do that, I'm not, you know what? I am shutting myself off and literally killing the purposes of God, because God wants me to then spread through me all the awesomeness that He is. How are they going to hear? Paul said, how are they going to hear if they don't have somebody to help tell them? How are they going to hear? How are they ever going to see the love of Jesus if somebody with the love of Jesus doesn't show the love of Jesus and just pretends for a moment that they're not icky? You know, this is a lie of the devil. Oh, those people are icky. Don't get near them. Wow. We've got the goods. We're the ambassadors. You know what an ambassador is? It's a representative of the king who happens to be on foreign soil. I'm on foreign soil right here, ladies and gentlemen. My citizenship is in heaven, and I'm on foreign soil. And as an ambassador of Jesus Christ, everywhere I go, I'm supposed to show the love of God. That's it. Now, I want to give you one more reason why relationships are so vital. Because it is the primary way that you and I are tested and proven. Oh, let's just go home. Let's just go home. If I didn't love Jesus and love you, I'd go home right now. Do you know that there are 3 ways, primary ways, that God will test your life? 1 is in finance, 2 is in health, and 3 is in relationships. And all the people said, oh me. That's right. Those are the 3 major life tests that you will encounter from God. Now, let's just stop right here. What's the purpose of a test? A test is a challenge that leads me to a choice. The test is not the challenge. The test is the choice that I make based on the challenge, because it is the choice that shows whether I'm loyal to God or not the challenge. Let me show you what I mean. I'm having a financial drought. Okay? The choice I make. Do I withhold my sacred portion from Jesus Christ because I'm going through a financial drought? If I do, I'm proving myself to be disloyal and unfaithful. If I have a windfall, anybody know what that is? I'd like to hear about that. Speak to me afterwards. A windfall. Yeah, my wife and I have had financial windfalls before. And it's all relative based on where you are. You know, sometimes $500 is a windfall. You know, if I have a windfall and I don't honor God with my sacred portion based on that windfall, I'm proving myself to be disloyal. So the test is the challenge that brings me to a choice, because it's the choice I make that's going to show whether I'm loyal to Jesus or not. So here comes Job. Guess what happens? Job chapter 1, tested with his wealth, loses it all. Chapter 2, loses his health. Now watch out now. Chapter 3 through chapter 37. He is tested in his relationships. The major way that you and I are tested in life is through the test of relationship. It might come sometimes as finance. It might come sometimes as health. And my wife and I know all about that, and a lot of you do too as well. But the major test, the primary way that we are tested in life, will come through relationships. Why? Because relationships reveal the most about us. Because relationships go deeper, relationships are more meaningful than possessions and conditions. Hey, listen, you can lose your car, and even if your car's got a name, you can get over it. Like Rupert. Somebody in our church has a car named Rupert. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but that's a dumb name, Alex. And hey, listen, you can lose a finger. You can lose a finger, and you can get over that. I mean, we got people coming back from war that they've lost limbs. They rise. Some of these people are the most courageous people you'd ever want to meet in your life. They get past that. But I want to tell you, relationships go to the heart. Job was tested in his body. He was tested in his soul. But then he got tested in the very heart of hearts. And he had to deal with 4 friends and 1 wife. Woo! For 35 chapters at least. Come on. Because that was the test. You see, relationships reveal things, tests of relationship reveal things about me that nothing else will. Let me tell you this. When God wanted to test Hezekiah to find out all that was in his heart, remember that? God left him to test him so he might know all that was in his heart. It wasn't a financial test. It wasn't a health challenge. He sent emissaries from Babylon, And it was Hezekiah's relationship to those people that revealed that Hezekiah had unfaithfulness in his heart. You see, Cain had hatred and murder in his heart. It never came out at home. It never came out at the altar. It never came out when he was sowing seed in his field. Never came out when he was harvesting. It came out when he encountered his brother in the field. Ooh, the sons of Jacob, all 10 of them. Let's count them, 10. Not 12, 10. They had jealousy in their heart. You'd never know it. Dad didn't know it. Never saw it. When they were feeding their flocks, never came out. When they were sitting around the campfire, never came out. But when Joseph showed up, it came out. When they encountered Joseph, it came out. You see, King David had anger in his heart, but you'd never know it. It didn't come out when he was worshiping, didn't come out when he was sitting on the throne, didn't come out when he was at home, didn't come out when he was offering offerings up to the Lord, didn't come out when he was fighting the Lord's battle, because it doesn't come out in worship, doesn't come out in prayer, doesn't come out in spiritual warfare, doesn't come out in church. It comes out when you're connecting with relationships. And David had anger in his heart, and that anger in his heart showed up when God touched his good friend Uzzah, and Uzzah fell on the ground. Then the anger came out. It was a relationship that brought that out. David had hatred and murder in his heart. He would have never known it if he hadn't run into Uriah. David had ambition in his heart. Pastor Buddy, this is a man after God's own heart. Yeah, I know. And he had junk in it. Just like us. You see, God uses relationships in our life to uncover for us unhealed hurts, unrestored areas, unrenewed things, and unchanged things in our life. He uses relationships to bring those to the surface, because financial challenge won't do it. Health challenge probably is not going to do it, but a relational challenge will, because it goes deeper than the other. And David had ambition in his heart. You know how you can tell? Because when Saul was in the cave and he had that kingly robe on, David came up and cut a piece of Saul's robe off. It literally to say, hey, listen, part of this kingdom belongs to me. I'm the one who's anointed. I'm the one who's called of God. I ought to have my piece. I get my part. And as soon as he walked out of that cave, his heart smote him, because he had no idea that that was in his heart. And it came out because of relationship. Let me tell you something. One of the greatest things that ever happened to me in my life is when God brought this woman into my life. Because I want to tell you, there were things in my life that could never come forth and come out unless there had been a relationship that provoked it. The best favor God ever did me, other than Jesus dying for me, is when he gave me her. Because there were things, probably still are things in my life that would never have surfaced. This is why when she married me, she said later, I had no idea what I was marrying. Yeah, because all of that stuff wasn't on the surface. It was down. Yeah, she's laughing now. Wait till I get her home. Listen, all that stuff was down in there. And family life didn't bring that out. A praying mother didn't bring that out. My church life didn't bring that out. Pastoring a church didn't bring that out. But I tell you what did. It was relationship that brought it forth. Thank God for relationship, because relationship is what God uses, and the tests of relationship, to get the junk out of us and reveal what is in the very depths of our heart, so that we can get it out and get on with the purposes of God. Mary's bringing Jesus into the temple, hands him to Simeon. Simeon starts prophesying. Right in the middle of Simeon prophesying, he stops. And he looks at Mary. He has just prophesied that the hearts of many would be revealed. That's what he's prophesied over Jesus. And he turns to Mary and he says, and a sword will pierce your soul also. In other words, you're not exempt from that. It's going to touch you too. You say, Pastor Buddy, Mary was perfect. Mary didn't ever do anything wrong. Baloney. Listen, in Mark chapter 3, Mary is standing outside where Jesus is with his brothers. And in chapter 3, verse 21, they come to the conclusion as his family, this guy is off the rails. He's off his rocker. He is beside himself. And they are trying to rein him in and get him out of there and talk some sense into him. That was his mother. That was in there. She didn't know it. 10 verses later, he's in another place, and his brothers and his mother are outside, and they are crying to him, come out, get out of there. We need to talk to you. We need to talk some sense into you. And somebody comes up to Jesus and interrupts the meeting and says, hey, your mom's outside. She's making an awful noise outside with your brothers. You know what Jesus said? Who is my mother? Who are my brothers? Those who do the will of my Father. Now, Mary, with all the time she spent with Jesus, that never came out until she encountered him, not as her son, but as God's son. You see, oh yeah, the last test that Jesus went through before the cross was a test of relationship. Betrayal, forsaking, deep wounding, disappointment, beating, harassment, crown of thorns, you name it. He went through it. And what was in his heart? Because you remember, test of relationship reveals what's in my heart. What was in his heart? Father, forgive them. And then, Father, I commit my spirit into your hands. That was what was in his heart. So what do we do with this? Very quickly, let me give you just a couple of things. How do we embrace Zebulun? Number one, I'm going to give you two, right? Number one, relationships are a gift. All relationships are a gift. Now, I'm not talking about the unholy ones. I'm not talking about the unholy alliances. I'm not talking about the stuff you're involved in you ought to get out of. We're talking about all God-given relationships are a gift. God gives relationships into our life because they're a gift. Amen. They're a gift. But you know what that means? You don't get to choose them. Now, I don't know about your family. With my family, there's this little undertone going around sometimes during birthday and Christmas. It says, just give me the money and I'll buy what I want. Have you ever heard anybody say that? Just give me the money, I'll go buy my own present. You know what God says about that? Forget it. God will never do that. He will not allow you to decide who is in your life and who is not in your life. He will never allow you that decision because those relationships are a gift. And they are the gift of God to you. You say, Pastor Buddy, some of these people are not a gift. Yes, they are. The reason I know that is because I said that to him about 2 or 3 days ago, and he said the same thing to me. But hey, let me tell you something. You know the thing about a gift? It requires an opening. You see, in the Old Testament, you know how you can tell when people aren't doing well? You know how you can tell when the nation of Israel's not doing well? When the kings are not doing well? You know the first thing that happens? They shut the door to the temple. They shut the door. They just shut them off. They shut people off. When people are not doing well with God, they shut the door to their life. They begin to disengage with God. And when we're not doing well relationally, we tend to shut the door to people. Not everybody, just the ones that we don't want to be bothered with anymore. Come on. No, I'm telling you, this is a challenge. If it wasn't a challenge, we'd be all at Starbucks right now. I have to declare that the relationships that God has put in my life are a gift. But Pastor Buddy, you don't understand my husband. Good, I don't. Maybe I don't, but I do. God does. My wife, this, that, my kids, my in-laws, this, that, yeah. People I work with, yeah, relationships. They're a gift. They're a gift. Therefore, I do not get to decide who I open and close my life to. Well, I don't like what they said. Open. Open. The first thing that happens in the Old Testament when God begins to move in the nation is the temple doors are opened. They open. I must open. So, relationship or gift. Secondly, the other one is this. Relationships, all those God-given relationships are good. They're good. That means they're beneficial. That means they're profitable to me. That means they're going to make a difference in my life. Something's going to happen in me because of those relationships. Now let me tell you the key. Here's the key. Very simple. I have to stay right when things are wrong. Yeah. You know, in the Old Testament and in the New Testament as well, when a king, by the way, we've been made kings and priests. When a king did not have any use for anybody anymore, you know what they would do with them? They would throw them in their prison. Ahab did this. There were two kings in the Old Testament. Prophet would say something they didn't like. You know what they do? They just throw him in prison, in the king's prison, because every king had his own prison. And he could just throw people in there. Didn't make a difference. There was no judge, trial, jury, anything like that. You just throw them in prison. And what that said was, I'm done with you. I'm finished with you. I have nothing else to receive from you at all. Now that happened twice in the Old Testament. It happened in the New Testament. Herod said, I've had enough of John. And he goes, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to have to deal with it. Boom, you're in my prison. You know, this is what happened to Joseph. Joseph got thrown into the king's prison because Potiphar had had enough. I mention that so you think about this. What Joseph didn't know was that approximately 2 years later, he would become Potiphar's boss. We need to be very careful about throwing people in prison, because we may end up having to walk with them very closely. Can you imagine somebody that you took off your screen down here, God puts you right next to in heaven? This is your work partner for eternity, right here. For eternity. Yeah, you're linked, tied. This is it right here. You're the one. Now you see, if Joseph had held his heart against Potiphar, he could have never been his boss and worked with him. In the New Testament, the servant of the Lord finds somebody that owes him something after he's been released. And he goes, you know what? Pay me. The guy goes, I can't. So what does he do? Into prison you go. And you know what? You stay there. You stay there. Now what Jesus tells us is that when I put somebody in prison, guess where I go? To prison. I put that guy in prison. Jesus said, oh, you put him in prison? Now you're going. That's how vital relationships are. Absolutely powerful. When my wife and I, just very quickly I end with this. When my wife and I were in England, we went through a real season of relationship testing. Probably some of the hardest and strongest that we had ever been through. And it really took me by surprise as to some of the reactions and things that were coming out of my heart. And basically because of mistreatment and our perceived unfairness and things from church leaders, we basically put them in prison. That's what we did. And the Lord came to us one day and he said this. He said, if you're going to get on with your life and you're going to fulfill your destiny, you got to get them out of prison. You put them in there, you take them out. You got to get them out. Because you see, when they're in prison, you don't have to deal with them. You don't have to look at them. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to interact. You don't have to encounter them. God said, you got to get them out. And we got them out. We did that. We took them out. And the next time we saw them, we had a meal with them. And we shared our hearts with them. And we came clean. And said, this is what God has shown us. This is what God has told us. And we just want to tell you how much we appreciate you and how much we love you. You know what happened when that happened? We came out of prison. We got out of prison. On Wednesday of this coming week, my wife is going to make a visit and have a meeting with her brother. Her brother is 8 years older than she is. And there's not been a lot of contact over the years. Some of it just out of negligence, but several weeks ago, the Lord began to deal with us about some things that we had done years and years ago with regard to our own relatives. Some stands that we had taken that seemed very righteous at the time, but probably ended up doing more damage than good. And the Lord has convicted her to go and meet her brother and to tell him what God has told her and to make that right. What's going to happen out of that? I don't know, but I do know this. If there's any prison, she's coming out. We're coming out. We think it'll be an opening for him to encounter the love of Jesus, maybe for the very first time. There's nothing like seeing humility in your family to know that God is doing something somewhere. I'm very proud of her for doing that. And you know what's amazing? She made one appointment. He missed the appointment. He totally forgot. She could have said, well, that must not have been God. I'll just quit. She went back again, said, hey, let's do this again. This Wednesday. Relationships are so key. They are a key to life. God gave us Zebulun to be relationally healthy people. We can be. I'm just wondering, in the group, if perhaps you might have found the same thing that I found, how easy it is to close the doors on people. Sit next to them in church, work next to them, pass by them, but your doors are closed. Or maybe some that have even been put in prison. And Pastor Buddy, what they did was not right. No, it never is. That's part of the relationship test. It's never fair. It's never just. It's never right. But maybe today, some doors need to be open. Some prisons need to be unlocked. And maybe just some renewing of relationship in general with Jesus.